Hello friend, welcome to a guide on building the simplest truffle worm farm there is. There are lots of amazing farms out there that give you lots of truffle worms, but those are pretty difficult to build, especially if you don't have a single clue on how hoiks work. That's why I'm here to show you the easiest farm you can build. It might not be the fastest one out there, but it definitely is the easiest and most beginner-friendly one. I'm Zuzucorn and I aim to entertain, encourage, and give casuals a place to call home. So subscribe now and join the casual family. In the simplest way I can put it, this farm is just a row of mud blocks. Yep, that's it. You might be thinking, how can this possibly be a truffle worm farm? First, we have to understand spawning mechanics in Terraria. In Terraria, monster spawns are relative to your character's position. Look at this diagram here. Enemies will not spawn too close to your character, so nothing will spawn in the grey area here. They will spawn only in the orange area as shown. Enemies will also not spawn too far away from you, so outside of this orange area, enemies usually won't spawn. However, take note that strangely, enemies still spawn underneath, below this limit. I'll show you how to deal with that later. Knowing this information, we can make it such that enemies will only spawn on the mud blocks that we have placed. So the first thing we have to do is to blow up a huge area. I recommend using lots and lots of dynamite. You can craft it into sticky dynamite as well using dynamite and gel. So just throw your dynamite down like this and get rid of as much as you can. Make sure you are doing this in the cavern layer, as truffle worms only spawn in this depth. If you're unsure how deep is the cavern layer, you can look for a background like this. If you notice, the background is different for the underground and the cavern layer. You can also use a depth meter, which is dropped from bats. So I've blown up a large area here. It might not be enough, but this can be adjusted later. Next, use an ice rod from the wizard to place down temporary ice blocks. You can then connect mud blocks to these, allowing you to build straight in the air. Make a nice long row of mud blocks like this. From the diagram earlier, we know that the maximum spawn radius is about 170 tiles. So let's just place down 180 mud blocks just to be safe. If you find out that your area isn't large enough, just adjust it accordingly. Now that we've got 180 blocks down, clean up the corners and make it into a nice box shape. It doesn't have to be too large. Right, I've cleaned it up. This is what it looks like now. I want to say now that even without doing things so cleanly, a smaller version will still nab you the truffle worms, albeit at a slower pace. Next, plant some mushroom grass seeds. You can get these by attacking the small mushrooms in the underground mushroom biome, or by placing the dryad in a house in a surface level mushroom biome. She will then sell you mushroom grass seeds. Once the mushroom grass has grown, truffle worms should be able to start spawning. Look, we got one already. If it's difficult to see them, buy a lifeform analyzer from the travelling merchant. This allows you to detect rare creatures. This means that when a truffle worm is on screen, it will be mentioned here. So once you see a truffle worm, just run at it and swing your bug net at the right time. If you mess up, the truffle worm will simply burrow away. Add a water candle to the setup as well to boost spawn rates even more. But we have an issue here. We have enemies spawning, but not on our platform. Enemies are still spawning below us, way past the spawn limits. You now have two choices. If you just want a few truffle worms for Duke Fishron, you can simply fly upwards to despawn the lower enemies. You can then keep track of this using a radar. When the enemies despawn, fly down and the truffle worm will have a higher chance of spawning again. If all you need are a few truffle worms, you can just do this. Just flying around and repeatedly despawning enemies will still get you the truffle worms you need. However, if you want to avoid this completely, measure 45 blocks downwards and place a long row of blocks below you. Then pour a few buckets of lava. The lava stops monsters from spawning underneath. With that problem settled, we now have lots of enemies spawning on the mushroom grass. This is great because we no longer compromise on truffle worm spawn rates. However, this creates a different problem. When an enemy touches the truffle worm dies. With so many enemies on this platform, it will be difficult to catch the fragile truffle worm. Using a strong summon weapon helps, but you still lose a few for sure. To reduce enemy spawns while not compromising on truffle worm spawn rate, I recommend creating a trap area to move some of the spawns down. Create a small row of blocks just a little higher than the lava, and then add some spiky ball traps to the top like this. Wire it together to a timer as well. I'm using a 1-second timer made from a gold watch and wire. Monsters can also spawn on the top here. So to avoid this, create a barrier using blocks and pour lava. So now monsters can spawn here and get killed by the traps or lava. We have successfully moved some of the enemy spawns down. So now we have fewer enemies on the grass to kill our truffle worms. Yet we have not reduced the worm spawn rate. With this, freely nab all the truffle worms that you want. Once again, I'd like to stress that this is not going to be the fastest or most efficient farm. However, it's one of the easiest ones to build. And honestly, it doesn't take that long to amass a stack of truffle worms. Well, I hope this simple farm guide has helped you nab some of your own truffle worms, so that you can finally face off against Duke Fishron, whose drops are much to be desired. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon too, for more Terraria guides and coverage. Feel free to check out my beginner guide series as well. This has been Zuzucorn Games, by casuals for casuals. Have a nice day and have a great week ahead. Bye bye!